G'day, citizens. Welcome to the Inforunners. I am Execute, joined today by Old Man Hurst and Algrid. How you doing, buddy?
Doing okay. I'm alive. It's always a good way to be.
All right, so we've got ISC this week. Apparently, it's about fire, Algrid.
Yeah, I was going to say, based on the, that it's going.
What
into
gave
the
it
fire.
away, Algrid? The background? No.
Yeah, the background. Out of a frying pan into the fire. Yeah.
All right, so we'll get straight into this one, and here we go.
Last week, we explored some of the new adventures available to players in space in the upcoming Alpha 4.0. But there are even more dangers to be found within your spacecraft and vehicles. Fire is blazing a trail towards its awaited debut in the persistent universe. And while we don't want to burn any bridges with the resource management team, we'll jump out of the fire and into their frying pan in just a few weeks. Wow, I really bet their ears are burning. We're fired up to give the VFX arsonists a chance to set the world on fire this week, or at least just the interior of spaceships, because we don't want them to burn themselves out playing with fire. I'm out of idioms now. I'm gonna go see if I can.
Way too many puns. I was just going to say that. Right?
Yeah, definitely. Very punned out.
Yeah.
Can add more fuel to the fire.
They're actually they're chili pizzas. That's why it's playing with fire.
I see. Hang on, I'm just going to move this up here. All right, yep.
Chili pizzas. Yep.
In 4.0, we'll have fire inside of ships. For our initial rollout, we didn't really want players to start fires everywhere. The poor service, they really wouldn't be able to handle it, so we decided to focus on the interior of ships. They're smaller, more contained, and more controlled.
Well, that does actually kind of confirm they want fires everywhere.
Yeah. And there are going to be fire. When fires come in, if they had it everywhere, everywhere would be burning.
Well, I remember I've had a couple of conversations with Paul, and we really think they're going to do wildfires.
Oh, hell yeah.
And yeah, I could just see, like, as a tactic even, like for an outpost, you set a fire and it comes in, and while they're dealing with that, you attack from the other side or whatever. Like,
Yeah. Oh, I could see, when fire comes in, every planet, every moon that can will be burning. Or
but there will be
just.
But there will be consequences, you know that, right? Like they're not just going to burn. Well, if you burn all the resources, there are no resources till they grow back.
Well, you burn microtech, and you could put more ash into the atmosphere. You're going to make it even colder.
Yeah,
they've even got that aspect of they could go. So
yep, I definitely reckon that'll be a thing. I wonder if you can go as far enough that it actually destroys planets. Like if you stuff up the environment enough, that could be a way they could go.
Oh, look, I could see them going as deep as they want, but I can say, even if they don't intend it, that players are going to burn whatever they can, just because that's what players are like. That's why you can't have nice things, because players are destructive.
But again, you've got to put in consequences, and then people won't. That's it. Yeah. All right.
Most won't.
Fire is tightly integrated with the resource network system, and a great fit for a first release within the spaceships, where resource network will be focusing on as many ships as we can. Starting a fire is based on damage, and different kinds of damage.
Fires can be caused by ship items when they hit 0 health. There are also ways for ship items to cause fires in the normal running and operation of them. We're currently looking at making it so that when they misfire and they have the highest level of wear, that there is a chance that they can also cause fires.
But other types of damage, like impacts from weapons or explosions, they could also ignite a fire. Another way to start a
This is a novice one. What do you call it? I was going to say a fire grenade, but it's not a fire grenade. You know what I mean? Like a grenade. God, man. Yeah, incendiary grenade. You're right. Yeah, that's what they're called. I was trying to think of the word. But yeah, that's the obvious one. But yeah, All right.
Well, I thought you'd have been really happy. I half expected you to just stop when you saw the antrium of the 890 in flames.
That's not an 890.
No, but they showed an 890 in flames earlier.
Oh.
And I was surprised you didn't
Hey,
stop
man.
it and go, music to my ears.
Dude, they've got taste. They know what to burn, you know? Like, they know what they're doing, you know?
Well,
if you're going to burn it,
that,
burn that quality content, you know?
it's just that the quality content has stuff that
goes up in
is
flames.
quality. As opposed to, I expect that, Drake ships, because they're made of plastic and gaffer tape, that they'll, they'll burn as well, but not as nicely.
Well, it doesn't burn as long. That's probably why they use the Origin ones. They burn a little longer. More testing, Alfred. More testing.
More stuff to burn. That's right.
Yeah. All right.
Fire is getting the environment hot enough to actually get your surfaces to auto-combust. For example, if you open up your door on a really, really hot planet and the hot air starts to flow into your ship, then if that air is hot enough, and some surfaces might start igniting from that.
Seriously? I could open my door and my ship might catch fire?
You would need a room to reach, I think it's like 1,000 Kelvin for those materials to start to smoke.
So it's something that's technically possible, but it's not likely.
If the planet is warm enough, yes.
Is there a planet warm enough to do that right now?
Don't think so.
Okay, I just want to be sure.
I think they need to talk to fireys, because I got mates who are fireys and they'll do the room tests. And when a room gets hot enough, everything in the room combusts.
I was just thinking more of a magna planet or something like that would be what they're talking about. So he's essentially talking eventually, this guy.
Yeah, but in the real world, when firefighters are training, they actually train how to deal with a room that actually just combusts, and they get to a certain temperature and everything in the room just combusts. Yep. It's not like, oh, there's fire here and here. It's like everything just goes. And that's what firefighters deal with. They train against that. So what they're saying about, you get to a room that's hot enough, everything can combust, absolutely, because firefighters deal with that today. So, they're not saying stuff that's weird.
Systemically, it's possible.
Systemically, it's possible, yeah.
It's technically possible, but very unlikely.
Don't worry, everybody.
Part of the fire hazard system propagation is based on the fire triangle, which is oxygen, fuel, and temperature. Oxygen is tracked by the room system. The atmosphere, that is, most rooms in the universe have their atmosphere tracked, including oxygen. The fuels, they will be tracked on the surfaces, so every surface in the universe is marked up with a surface type. That surface type has different properties for fire propagation to work. The heat.
So the only problem I'm kind of having visualizing some of this stuff is I know that reclaimer room, right? And it's mainly metal. Metal doesn't burn like that. It's got to have a much higher activation point, and so most of the room, it just doesn't seem real to me. But maybe I'm not visualizing it properly. Maybe this is a test. I don't know. It just doesn't.
Maybe it's the minerals that have been burned, or the stuff that's been mined that is giving off gases, and it's the gases that are burning. Again, just tossing thoughts out.
Yeah,
but
you get my point though, right? Like I'm visualizing this from an Earth standpoint, so it's just not as realistic as it should be to me. But anyway, I digress.
That is usually from a ignition source, is the damage that could happen, but also if you have an object already on fire, that could start a fire again based on the heat that fire is emitting. Fire will start small if you have a small ignition point, so it will not start blazing immediately, so it will start propagating quite slowly. But if you leave it untended, then the fire will start growing, and the more it grows, the faster the propagation will happen and the larger the fire will get.
It's quite complicated to have a control over that much energy, heat. It's a balance. I think that's the hardest thing to get, having the balance, having the fire texture that works well with the particle behavior, with the heat, the sparks. You need to have the whole feeling of heat and danger. And it's when you get this spot where it really starts to make you look certainly afraid of it that, yeah, it starts to gets good, I would say.
Each of the materials that we have marked up, they have their properties, and we can set a material to be combustible or not. Most surfaces will be combustible. A few exceptions, such as glass, will not be. But the ones that are, especially in ships, we decided to go for a more tech approach. So even if metal itself will not easily combust, we assume that behind that metal there will be pipes and cables that can catch fire.
Yeah, that makes more sense. Right.
Yeah. And the other thing they have been saying, like I've heard them say 2 or 3 times now, every material has a listed in its properties how combustible it is. So you've got those elements impacting the fire on the ships as well. So
the thing I keep thinking of is the one thing I don't know, we're only about halfway through the video, maybe they'll show it, but the first thing that I think a lot of people are going to do is they're going to set fire to something, then they're going to open the door of their spaceship and watch how it goes out. They haven't shown that yet, so I'm wondering if they've done the effects for that yet. But
yeah, well, I was even thinking, as you know, when they was talking about when the fire gets, when it gets to a point where you're afraid of it, I'm thinking that's when you vent.
On the properties that each surface type has, for example, wood will burn different from rubber or plastic or metal. So the propagation between those will interact differently. Don't worry, like not everything will catch fire at the same time. We have these different properties that will cause different surfaces to catch fire at different times.
You have.
Which kind of leads into what you were saying about Drake versus Origin. So Drake's probably way more like, because they got the plastic bin liners on the wall, probably far more likely to go up really quick.
Yeah, well, the wood on the Origin ships will burn differently from as well. So, and the plastics, where I imagine would give off more noxious gases and stuff. The other thing that caught my eye, that I was thinking of when they were talking about the, you know, if the temperature outside was hot enough, the internals of a ship could burn. And that also means ships with air shields would actually be protected from that, because the air shields would be keeping the...
As long as the air shields stay up.
Yeah. The second the air shields go down, then you've got problems. But you've got that balance again in components and things on the ship that would could impact in those situations. So
getting back to what I was saying at the start of this, it basically means different manufacturers are probably going to be better at handling fires than others. So I just think that's kind of interesting.
So Drake should be the best at firefighting because their ships...
No, what I'm trying to get at is like, I think a real basic one is the military ships are probably more hardened than say Origin or Drake at all. To give you an example, so I expect them to be a bit more fire resistant. But and other ships will be better just because they've been more put into those safety mechanisms. So whereas Drake has always been that, we don't have ejection seats because it's more expensive. So I imagine, you know, we've got the minimum requirements for fire because... Well, we haven't even got into, like you know, when you're in a building these days, like any form of commercial building, they have those fire extinguisher things all through the roof. Now, you can't tell me that they haven't got those in most ships, because they would.
Yep.
You know, if fire is such a danger that we always hear about in space, fire is like one of the worst things. We hear about that. They would have some kind of system where you could just airlock the room, extinguish the shit out of it, done. Right? And then it vents itself and done. You know? So again, we're talking 1,000 years in the future. They would have tech that we just would not have. But,
we would expect to have that.
But that hinders gameplay. So that's why we probably don't have it.
Yep.
So yeah.
It's that balance, isn't it? The realism versus realism now versus gameplay, and also what we'd expect going forward versus gameplay. And sometimes they don't align the way you logically, and you just suck it up.
To think of the other things that can also catch fire. Things like your cargo, which you probably don't want to catch fire, because if it burns out, you will lose it. Other things might be loose ship items that you have laying around just in case you want to repair your ship.
The player itself will not be able to catch fire, but the player will feel the influences of fire in their environment. So if you step into the fire, then you will take damage. If you are near to the fire, you will feel the heat, so your actor status will start showing up with like higher temperatures. If the fire is not managed properly, for example, your life support can't feed in enough oxygen, then oxygen will be drained and your player will start to asphyxiate.
Why can't I set people on fire?
Tech.
Will you commit here and now that someday we'll set people on fire?
I will commit to nothing.
I tried, everybody.
People will have different ways of setting fires to ships, hopefully other people's ships, not your own. It is important to know for 4.0 that we will not have fire outside of ships. So if you set fire to an item inside one ship, you can bring it to another ship, given that the medium that...
So you literally described tier 0.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, a system this big, you can even see that this is like they've limited the ships. Like, of course, it's gonna have to catch players' fire. Like, it just has to do that realistically. You're not just gonna like they walked into the fire and then fell over dead. Fire doesn't affect you like that in real life. You would catch on fire. What happened to the whole stop, drop, and roll? You know, like, you get my point, right? Like, it's clearly tier 0. Yeah. All right.
you're traveling through has enough oxygen to sustain the fire. You can set fire by damaging items in the ship, so shooting them when an item dies, that has a chance to set fire. Other ways to set fire are bringing in ignited items and placing them in someone else's ship. One of the biggest challenges that we recently had with fire was the networking, and Francesco has done a really, really amazing job with getting that ready.
The presence or absence of fire is a very, very important thing to convey to players. You don't want a player stepping into a thing that doesn't look like it's burning or avoiding a thing that looks like it's burning. Synchronizing fire was a very important part of making sure that the feature functioned correctly. And
the guy definitely is the character for fire. I'm just pointing out, he looks like he's a fire expert.
We have a lot of data that fire generates, and a lot of data doesn't work well over networks. There was a lot of work being put into relying as much as possible on the fact that our fire system is stable, it's deterministic, it will always do the same thing given the same initial parameters. There were a lot of cases. There were cases of players joining in late. They obviously don't get where the fire was 3 hours ago. They just see now. They need to know what it is now. There's players who have really bad internet connectivity or servers struggling a lot, situations that bring a halt to the continuous progress of fire from one end or the other, and we need to reconcile that. So we needed a way to know when fire was no longer suitably similar between what the player was seeing and what the server thought was there, and refresh it at that point, and minimize how much data we needed to refresh it at that point. We are pretty happy with the way it works now. We have it so that it sends as little data as possible to sort of create these summarized states for the client and server, and only when these differ enough do we actually send that relatively big, still compressed, but relatively big snapshot to synchronize everything back.
Just sitting there thinking, Agrid, in that shot just a second ago, wait, this one.
Summarized states for the client and server.
There's a lot of smoke coming out of those extinguishers. Are they eventually going to do different types of fire extinguishers, like in real life? You know, you have foam. Yeah. Because that would be a really good way to go into different levels of fire gameplay, as an example.
Well, yeah. Well, I would expect them to eventually, because you know, for electrical fires, you don't use water.
Yeah.
You know, you know, for oil fires, you don't use. You know, use different things for different fires, and our ships have got different.
Well, even if the fire extinguishers were clever enough to have different modes, you know, because of tech or whatever, but that would just still be really cool to to have something different, because I'm just sitting here looking like, in this instance where there's already a lot of smoke and you're trying to get visibility, you'd probably try and use foam. But hey,
well, it depends on the fire, but yeah.
Yeah, you got
yeah, I know. I know exactly what you're saying. You want to make it for gameplay. You don't want the fire extinguisher to add to the mist and the cloud and make it impossible to see. You actually want putting out the fire to actually improve visibility.
Well, the other advantage is it might cost more for foam or something like that. But the other thing was in just before, he was literally putting the fire out and it was coming back as he was walking past it. And I'm like, if that was foam, that wouldn't happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the remember tier 0.
Yeah.
The other thing that
I know it's tier 0. I'm just talking future. Yeah.
The other thing that is absolutely clear, if people haven't known, and the blatant thing in the thing is, fire extinguishers are here. That those are inanimate objects that are stuck in our ships that we can't take out. They are going to have to be remodeled and redone and added, and and the empty slots on some ships we now see, they will end up having the fire extinguisher put in them. So
I think the other thing is going to be the other thing I noticed is a lot of people, like even in the footage, you were standing too far back from the fire, so it's going to be one of those things initially where you don't want to be too close, but you don't want to be too far away as well. So there's going to be a little trial and error there initially.
Well, yeah, it depends on the system you're using. I'm surprised they're still using handheld devices to fight the fire. Like if it was that point, I'd imagine you'd have been using, your heavier duty damage control hoses and
the roof things I was talking about too. The fire.
Yeah. So.
And only when these differ enough do we actually send a relatively big, still compressed, but relatively big snapshot to synchronize everything back together.
A fire that is left unchecked will spread throughout your ship. And if it does this and it reaches your ship components,
system is offline,
then you'll be having a very bad day. And this could lead to your ship being both crippled or destroyed. So this means you will be able to put out fires using a fire extinguisher. Where possible, we have made sure that fire extinguishers are readily available throughout our ships.
The extinguishers, they're very simple to use. They are point and shoot. You have to be careful that you don't start flailing wildly with your extinguisher. If you have to aim at the base of your fire and then keep it there to cool down the surface and take away enough of the heat and the oxygen so that the fire calms down. There will be a temperature readout.
Have you ever used a fire extinguisher?
Well, actually, once in training.
They don't work like that. They're a lot quicker. They just totally remove the oxygen from the area. Yep. They're talking about cooling down the surface. That's not how a fire extinguisher works. It just smothers the shit out of them.
They take the oxygen away from the fire.
Yeah, and they go out fairly quickly. Like, that's what they're designed to do. I don't know if you saw that. He's almost like anti-firing. Like if I shoot this smoke, it's bringing the fire down to the point. It doesn't work like that. It's done. Like, it's instant.
Yeah. Although I think in the terms of the gameplay, where the fire starts when the temperature cooling it down is where they're tying it. But you're right.
Maybe it's a space thing because of oxygen.
They are right. Yeah. They are right as well in terms of you don't want to spray your fire extinguisher at the flames. You want to spray it at the base because that's what you do.
Yep.
In the real world, you attack the base of the fire, not the flames themselves. And that's how you're removing this. You're removing the fuel source or the oxygen source from the fire is how I understand. So you're taking one of those elements away and removing the heat.
But bring it back to the point of the actual fire extinguishing. It's just not quick enough. Like, that's what I was saying. Like, again, the only thing I can think of is gameplay reasons. But throughout this whole video, I've seen like people walking past fires that would go out instantly and they're coming back and things like that. So I don't know, maybe again, you said tier 0 and I'll give them tier 0. But it just seems like it's too lengthy to put out fires at the moment. But yep. I guess time will tell. Yeah.
Where you can see how strong the fire is still where you're aiming.
and you need to keep your finger on the trigger until it actually goes
Case in
out.
point.
Fires can just be smoking there, and technically it's very close to being on fire. So you really do want to make sure it's really out before you move on. Because if you just leave them smoking and then go wandering off, there's a good chance it will heat up again and catch fire again. It's worth knowing that a fire extinguisher has a limited amount of ammo within it. To your benefit, you can also take your fire extinguishers back to where they are stored, plug them in, and then they will recharge the ammo. However, it is important to know that if your ship doesn't have a functioning life support at this moment, the recharge will not work.
If you leave the fire completely untended, then your ship can completely burn out, so it will look completely black. If the life support can keep up providing enough oxygen, then it will just keep going until all of the fuel, that is the surfaces, has been burnt out. Or if the life support is not running, then your fire will start to diminish. But if you don't do anything, the life support will keep feeding in oxygen enough for the fire to be sustained and start spreading everywhere.
You don't want people to put fires out?
No, I want them to die in a fire.
The views and opinions of Leo do not represent those of Platinum Pyramid Games, Harvard Space Industries, or its subsidiaries.
There are more ways to extinguish fire. With the life support and resource network, you can cut power to your life support for a room, and that means that there will be no more oxygen provided, which means that the fire itself will start using up all the oxygen, and it will extinguish slowly by itself. Another way is to open up your doors to open space, and that will mean that all of the atmosphere is being sucked out into open space, and again, no more oxygen for your fire to continue. After a fire, you can repair your items or replace them. Fire can damage your interior of your spaceship. We have some very beautiful burn decals that Francesco and Guillaume have been working on to show you where your ship has been burnt. The visual damage to the surfaces is not something you can repair manually, but you can go to a repair station and repair your ship there, and that will get rid of all of the visual burn.
But if I want to leave it burned because it looks cool, I can do that?
You can do that. It persists. I'm very happy with the current progress. It's been a very long road for the team to get to this point. It's amazing to finally be able to roll this out to the players.
It's amazing to work with, it's just so fun, and the results are very good and very quick, so.
I'm looking forward to see what people will do with it, like what kind of weird edge cases they'll find, and we'll probably have to fix up. But as long as the servers don't die because of fire, I think we will be able to deal with it.
I hate to tell them.
So
I hate to tell them that the servers will initially die because of fire, because everyone will start fires.
Yeah, I did notice in the last few shots that it had a lot of smoke too, which something else I thought had been missing. But it's good to see that they actually had, because that is very common. The only thing I think I would say is there's not enough movement in the smoke, but because as the fire moves, it disturbs the smoke. So again, if they're already having server issues, it might just be cheaper to not move the smoke. But
and I think like they talked about, opening your ship to space to vent.
Yeah.
But I also recall right at the beginning it said fire will not be outside of ships, and so I don't think we'll see that gush of fire being sucked out.
Yeah, not yet anyway.
Because tier 0.
And again, the smaller the ship, like they showed the cutter going off there, you wouldn't even bother with that. You would just from the cockpit, you would just go open external. Done. Like and because of the cost and timing involved, you would almost open it and then go around with the fire extinguisher. You'd be trying to do both,
Like if you're able to determine which rooms get oxygen, just have oxygen in your cockpit if you don't want to wear your spacesuit.
Exactly.
But yeah, I can see people just having their atmosphere turned off just to mitigate
the accidentalness of a fire, plus it essentially cools everything in the ship.
Yeah.
You know, so
Now,
there are advantages to not having atmosphere because you're not using as much power, obviously.
yep. So you can go further.
Yep, that's it.
But then the downside is you've got to wear your spacesuits, and your spacesuits will run out of oxygen, so you got to go plug them in. Blah blah blah. That's it.
All right, let's just go wrap up here.
Yep.
What did we learn this week? Well, we learned where and how fire will make its first appearances in the persistent universe, in your spaceships. How it'll spread and the dangers of leaving it unchecked. Your spaceships will burn and maybe go boom. And both how you'll put them out or potentially spread the fire to other vehicles. And I'm banking y'all might find some ways that we missed. Now don't forget the ship showdown is still underway. It's your chance to vote on which vehicles you like best, as well as send John Crew messages on social media that he legally has to respond to during this time.
Hi all, David here. The only thing I have to say about this is no. Just no. Our program will now conclude.
For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. Thanks for letting us share the people and process of game development with you, and we'll see you all here next week. It's time to go Pyro Planet side.
That explains all the posts I saw on Twitter this morning giving John Crew feedback. So people did not get the message. Anyway.
How do you start a fire? First, you contact the ATC.
Yeah, I could start with that. That would be good. I could say that. You want me to do that? Well, first of all, you start. Yeah, you call the ATC and they set fire to your ship.
Oh dear. All right then, Agrid. What were your overall thoughts on that? I think it's been a kind of a long time coming. I still think it's got a fair bit of work to go, though. Personally,
we have seen fire be worked on for years and years and years. We've seen them talk atmosphere in rooms for years. We've seen them talk fire propagation, spreading to the rooms depending on what fuel's available. I think the fact that they're bringing it in 4.0 is an indication they've got it to a point where they're happy. Is it perfect? No. But yeah, it's at a point where they're confident they can now bring it into the game and it'll work. And it's something they'll iterate on and build on.
I'm kind of sitting here thinking to myself, why didn't they do like the venting of things into space first? And I mean things like you open the doors and your boxes fly out or everything gets sucked out. And this probably answers that. They probably needed fire working inside a ship first. Before they could open the doors and then have everything sucked out, because obviously fire is going to be sucked out along with everything else. So they had to have the fire in there, just like they've got the cargo system in now and boxes working. They got to build it before they can modify it, essentially.
And the boxes and stuff wouldn't get sucked out if your gravity plates are still working. So only the loose stuff would be chucked out. So you've got those.
You're missing the point again. The point is they have to build it before they can use it.
I realise they've got to build it before they can do it, and they need. And when they open up, you're getting your loose stuff sucked out. But just because you open your doors shouldn't mean your boxes get sucked out. But if your fire has damaged your gravity plates, then yeah. But it is balancing and it's getting all the stuff done beforehand before they can do the outside stuff. And as I said, the fire is not going to be outside of ships, so we're not going to see the fire sucked out yet. But eventually, I think we will.
Yeah, so let me know in the comments below, where do you think fire's up to? Where would you like to see it to go? Yeah, what would you like to hear?
Yeah, I think, what are you looking forward to? What ships are you looking to see burn? Apart from everything.
All right, don't forget to like, subscribe, ring that notification bell. Thank you to everyone that went extra mile on Patreon at the end of the video. All right, with that then, he's been Agrid.
He's been Execute, and we're out of here. Take care.
See you, citizens.